Are you interested to find out what the best Euro nymphers do to find fish in unlikely areas? Would you like to learn how to detect more fish and manage your line better? Maybe you'd like to learn a cast that will allow you to catch more fish and deal with the wind quite a bit better? The man behind the huge Modern Nymphing Series and who has worked closely with two of the best Euro nymphers in the game shares his biggest tips today on the podcast. This is the Wet Fly Swing Podcast, where we show you the best places to travel to for fly fishing, how to find the best resources and tools to prepare for your big trip, and what you can do to give back to the fish species you love. Hey, I'm Dave, host of the Wet Fly Swing Podcast. I've been fishing since I was a little kid. I grew up around the fly shop and created one of the largest fly fishing podcasts in the country. I've also interviewed more of the greatest fly anglers than just about anyone in this country. Today, Gilbert Rowley will be describing the three biggest things he learned while producing some of the best Euro nymphing videos that are out there right now. We cover finding fish, fighting fish, casting tips, and how to detect strikes. Plus, you're going to find out which rig is the best to use if you're getting some wind that's making things a bit tough on the water. This is a good tip that you might not be thinking about. Excited to share this one today, so here we go. Gilbert Rowley. How you doing, Gilbert?
Doing well. Thanks for having me, Dave.
Yeah. Thanks for coming on here and putting some time aside this morning to talk about some topics that we've talked a lot about in the past, but are always hot topics. Euro nymphing is one. I know you've worked with, produced some really awesome videos and some educational content. Also, you've got this great video production company that I want to talk about because you've got a lot going on there. I know the film tours and festivals are out there. So we have all that going. Let's take it back, though, before we get in there. Talk about how you first got into fly fishing and kind of what's your first memory.
You bet. Yeah, so fly fishing started for me when I was pretty young, 13, 14 years old. But it was like buying a Walmart 8-weight, trying to catch 10-inch rookies and rainbows with it. It was terrible. But, after catching more cattails and fish for about 6 months, 8 months, I actually ditched it for like another 6 or 8 years until after high school, fly fishing became cool. I had some brothers and some people that were getting into it. And I just started picking it up. And the first time I went out on an actual river instead of a high mountain lake, I fell in love with it so much that that's all I wanted to do. I gave up other hobbies like playing the guitar and some other things and just totally went headfirst, just all in. And I guess, since then, it's been a great experience that I'm grateful for. It's been a huge part of my life that, I can't say besides family, my wife more every single day than just trying to get outside and be on the water. Fly fishing is so amazing.
That's great. Yeah. And you're doing a lot of, I think with the production company you have, it seems like you're traveling a lot around the country. How does that look? Are you getting around to like all over the country, all over the world? What's that look like as far as how do you, kind of choose where you're going next?
Yeah, we're super blessed. We're extremely blessed where we, when we first started doing films, we were pretty much in the Western U.S. on our own budgets, but now it's been 8 years full-time as a filmmaker in the fly fishing industry. So now we definitely travel, 2, 3, 4 times a year to some of these more remote destinations, places that are very, very exciting outside of the country. But for the most part, the day-to-day is Western U.S. still. We're still trout guys. We love it. It never gets old. We can go catch these gigantic fish all over the place. We can go saltwater. But to come home and target little cutties on dries is still special, So
yeah,
definitely a great combination of both. Yeah, very blessed.
Nice. So you got going on the fly fishing and you picked it up again and then you're all in and you eventually got into some guiding, and maybe talk about that and then how you connected with, because I kind of first knew about you just from, I think, the Euro nymphing stuff with everything that's going with Team USA and some of the videos you produced there. But how'd that all come to be?
Yeah. So when I say head in, like just all in fly fishing, it really was. So I actually changed my degree in college, even at that time, and studied fisheries and aquatic science, graduated from Utah State with that degree. And that's where I met Devin Olsen. We had some classes together. We became friends. We both loved to fly fish. And it was back in 2009 when I was just on a spring day, after school, we were like, dude, let's go hit the river together. First time I fished with Devin. I'm rigging up my little zebra midges and my indicator because, early spring, that's what I had been told. That's what you fished. And he's over there with this cider, this colored sectional line built into his leader, these size 12, 14, 16 flies, these huge flies for springtime fishing, according to what I'd been doing. And before I was even rigged up, before we were out of sight of the car, he landed like 3 or 4 fish out of a spot that everybody just walks by. And dude, I was like, what are you doing? What technique is this? What is going on? And back then there was nobody was creating ciders or Euro lines or, we had to tie our own tungsten nymphs. They were very hard to come by. Everything was hard to come by. But Devin, he was kind of, he'd been a year or two into it probably at that point. And dude, I was blown away. And, we fished all day. He caught way more fish than I did. Absolutely crushed it. Just fish were all over the place that I didn't even know fish resided, in certain locations in the river. And I just learned so much that when we got back to the parking lot, I wouldn't let him leave until he had given me some of that colored line, taught me how to tie it in, taught me where to do, how to fish, taught me, everything that you can learn in a parking lot conversation.
Yeah.
With Devin. And that's when it just really became real that Euro Nymphing it's game changer. And Devin and I, we just needed to develop that relationship from there. Him and Lance were already buddies. So Lance joined the conversation, and it was just a few years after that the three of us decided to create the Modern Nymphing film series, which has been a big part in helping a lot of people learn these techniques. We created 3 films in that series over a space of about 5 years, and have just had phenomenal feedback. And realistically, like, seeing the big picture, our goal is to help people get outside. We want them to catch fish. We want them to improve their time on the water so that they can, get outside more often and be more excited about it, and that it can be special for them as well. So it's been really fun to see that film series has helped with that. And, going full circle now, we actually turned it into an online course, Modern Nymphing Masterclass, which is available now. And so it's a much better user interface and things like that. But yeah, it's been a super fun ride, getting to know those guys. And Euro Nymphing is definitely something that really enhances my time on the water. And yeah, it's fantastic.
So it's a course. So if somebody wanted to pick up that now, what would they get so the video, you have all the videos, but now you turn into more like there's some downloads, things like that.
Yeah, so before they were all on Vimeo, and you'd have to scrub through the whole video, like a 2-hour-long video, to try to figure out, if you wanted to go back and check out some sections. But now it's actually broken out into chapter content, and there is some new content on there as well. So there's I think there's 103 chapters, over almost 6 hours of content on there. So just a ton of great stuff, and much, much easier. It's priced incredibly well right now as kind of an introductory price. It's $47 for the entire thing. If you would have bought all the DVDs or Vimeo on demands, it would have been about $90. So it's cheaper now. It's a much better experience, and new content too. So it's awesome.
That's cool. So basically, all those videos, the Modern Nymphing series. And where would they go? Could folks go right now to take a look at that?
Yeah. So modernnymphingmasterclass.com is where they'll go.
Nice. Good. Yeah. That's super value. I mean, $50 for all that content. And that was Lance. Was that Lance and Devin doing both of those?
Oh, yeah. Yep. So Lance and Devin. Yep. And then I do a little bit of instructing with some of the new stuff as well.
Oh, cool.
That's on there. Yep.
Nice. So that's awesome. So that makes the connection. We've had Devin, Lance on, and probably lots of the guys down in Utah and around your area. But so we made the connection there. You're obviously, I've been wanting to talk to you a lot, because I know you produced all those. But so when did the video thing start for you? How did you, you produced this video production, but did you get like some background, or you just teach yourself on this?
Yeah. So, back at Utah State, when I was becoming friends with Devin, I made friends with another guy named Phil Tuttle as well. And the two of us, we just loved fishing, and we were both into photography as well. We bought a DSLR and just started documenting our trips. And those videos are absolutely terrible. They're fun to look back on now. Kind of like a journal, but not as like a cinematic masterpiece by any means. But yeah, we just started, like a lot of guys do, out on our own, trying to figure it all out. So it was online that I learned. YouTube was a big help. There's a couple of online courses that I also invested in. I think it's huge when people are passionate about something. If you're willing to invest in yourself, like I spent, I think, $600 on a course called Full-Time Filmmaker 6 or 7 years ago, maybe 8 years ago. And, for $600, that was a big thing to drop at the time. That wasn't cheap, but I learned more in the first couple of months of that course than I had learned in years leading up to that point. And the same thing goes with anything that people are passionate about. Invest in yourselves, put some money out. That doesn't mean going to college necessarily. It can, but there's so many good resources out there now. And that was a huge blessing for me. And just over time, it's fun to look back. All my videos are still on my YouTube for the last 12 years or something like that.
Oh, wow. So everything's there still.
Everything's there.
That's
so
cool.
People want to look back and be like, wow, yeah, he did start with really terrible videos,
That's amazing.
Yeah, we're not afraid. I'm not afraid to admit it. They're still there. A lot of them are fly tying videos. That's also what we started with. We had an old website called Fly Tying 123 that actually picked up a lot of steam for a number of years, and we had I don't know how many tying videos on there.
That's cool. That is really awesome. I love the journey stories because I'm on the same journey, and I think about the past and all the failures I've had. I'm sure you've had lots along the way, things that didn't work out, but it's the invest in yourself is a great quote because it's like, I think that's probably the biggest thing that has helped me. And you know what I mean? Like whatever. And same thing with people listening now. I mean, if they want to get better at fly fishing, whether it's buying your course, taking a guide trip, whatever, that's investing in yourself to get better at something, right? We're passionate about it. Would that be good advice to spend some money on your fly fishing, education?
You bet. Yeah. I mean, if people want to cut that learning curve and just really, get a leg up on learning these things, without a doubt, 100%.
Yeah. Cool. So you get this going, and now you're at this level of the video, you're way up there, you're doing all sorts of amazing things. It's like, a full business and all that. I mean, as you take it back and look back when you started, did you have any idea this is where you were going to be before you got into the video? And just when you were getting in fly fishing, I knew you were passionate about it, but did you know this is the track you'd be on?
Not at all. No. I love that question because in all reality, we can never look into the future and see what it has in store for us. But if we move forward with faith and just trust that good things are to come and we work hard, it's fun to look back and connect the dots and say, holy smokes, like I never could have imagined being here. But, 8 years ago, I was actually working in the electronics industry, not even in the fishing industry, and we were doing very well financially and life was good. It was a fantastic job and business was great. And we had a trajectory to continue to move into that space. But it wasn't the plan, so we actually ended up just outright quitting that job and nobody understood. People could not understand why anybody would ever do that. And, I actually thought that it was going to be more centered towards guiding and creating an online business, not filmmaking by any means. I did guide on the Provo River here in Utah for about 10 years on and off, which was a great experience. But as soon as I quit that job, believe it or not, like the film side of things just started to pick up steam. The guiding side of things just started to dwindle and diminish. And with that, before I even knew what was really happening, this path that I'm on, that I'm still on, was kind of being laid before me without me even knowing it.
Wow.
And yeah, looking back, it's fun to connect that and just be to this place where we're now, paying for a mortgage, supporting a family, and doing all that from fly fishing is pretty remarkable.
That is remarkable. No, it's so cool. And on the video, so I know video's not easy. I mean, obviously we're talking here on a podcast. I love audio. That's kind of my space. But how hard has it been to get to the video where you are? I mean, obviously you've taken some course and stuff. I mean, what has been your secret to your success your style? You know what I mean? You've probably created your own style. Has that been something where you've just been working with other people over time and just developed it?
Yeah. So the number one thing that I tell people when I get asked that question of how to develop a style and how to just become knowledgeable with filmmaking is I tell them, just get outside and film. Just get outside as much as you possibly can, whether it's on a phone, whatever camera you have, like you just got to shoot stuff and you'll learn as you go, like what works and what doesn't work. And that's our goal, is to be outside as much as we possibly can and not be stuck editing too much. Yeah. We always joke a little bit, we'll go film a destination for a week. Then we'll come home with all that footage and it takes at least a month, if not more, to cut the footage,
Oh, wow.
So we spend way more time with a computer editing than we do actually filming. But the more you get out, the more you learn, and the process kind of develops itself. Your style will develop itself, but you've got to get out there as much as you can. And yeah, that's been our experience. And working with other people and collaborating, same with Devin and Lance with Euro Nymphing. Like every time I fish with those guys to this day, they're so involved with it. They're on the cutting edge of all of that stuff that I learned so much every single time. If it's been a few months that I haven't fished with them, I get out there and I'm just blown away. And that's how it is the filmmaking too, and gear only gets you so far. Like we do shoot on very nice cameras nowadays. We've got cinema cameras with nice glass. And all of that helps. But more than anything, I really think that we could shoot a beautiful film on an iPhone. It's just learning composition, learning angles, learning what to look for, a couple little tips, things like with a fish lift, if you get down on the waters at the same level as the water and you're low, instead of shooting into the water, like it's always going to look better if you shoot low with that fish with a beautiful background. Just little tips like that nobody's here to tell you that. You just have to learn by experience.
Yeah. No, that is a good tip. Yeah. So I was going to pick your brain on a few of those, video kind of tips and stuff. That's a good one, right? So you definitely want to get lower or get a different angle, maybe something that people don't see all the time. Is that something you're thinking about when you're out there? How do you get the different view that people don't always see?
Yeah. So we're always trying to be creative, try to do new things, but we also learn things that work for us along the way. And that's, getting different angles, also thinking of it from just different perspectives. Like, we all see drip and grins. We all, nowadays there's so many guys making great films out there. That's the cool thing about the world we're in today is there's a lot of good things to reference, but, don't be afraid to try something new. We also run into nowadays we have to shoot for social media as well for everything else. I mean, all of a sudden, if you've got we had this trip to Iceland this last year where we caught some, bigger than over 30-inch ski run brown trout.
Yeah.
And when you have to figure out how to crop that for a vertical frame,
right.
you either have to stand 30 yards back to fit that fish in the frame, or you've got to flip your camera sideways, right? So there's these new things that, as technology develops and social media develops, there's all these different things that we're having to adapt to. But yeah, there's a lot of different fun techniques out there. Yep.
Today's episode is sponsored by Eastern Idaho's Yellowstone Teton Territory, Idaho's most renowned zone for fly fishing, from the Henry's Fork to the South Fork of the Snake, and all the high alpine lakes and streams in between. Yellowstone Teton Territory provides anglers and other outdoor enthusiasts with all the information they need to plan their next big trip. You can visit wetflyswing.com/Teton right now to get the full list of outfitters, lodges, fly shops, and all kinds of inspiration to get you started on your next trip to Eastern Idaho. That's Teton, Teton, wetflyswing.com/Teton. Dreaming of battling a giant rainbow trout in Alaska's untouched rivers? Turn that dream into a reality with FishHound Expeditions. Immerse yourself in the heart of Alaska, where epic landscapes and legendary fish await. Visit fishhoundexpeditions.com and mention this podcast to begin your adventure. FishHound Expeditions, your gateway to the ultimate Alaskan fishing experience. Well, talk about, there's some film tours and things like that. Maybe talk about, before we jump, because I want to get into some Euro Nymphing and some tips and things like that, but where can people find what's going on, what's coming up in 2024 as we're talking here on your videos?
Yeah, so this is a very exciting year for us. We have 2 films in the IF4, the International Fly Fishing Film Festival. We have a saltwater film and a freshwater film. So the saltwater film is based out of a place called South Caicos. It's a bonefishing film, and it's a super cool destination. It's a place that is pretty much untouched compared to some other bonefish fisheries. And the main reason why we decided to do a film down there, actually, the fishery is awesome. The fish are over the average size bonefish in most places. They're big, but the fishery, by educating people about it, we're hoping to actually bring some protection and bring some help to actually improve this wonderful part of the world.
Yep.
And so, but it is a fun adventure-packed film. We have some pretty amazing experiences. We even have our wives down there, and they each get to get their first bonefish ever, which is a struggle but fun.
Yeah.
But it's a pretty cool project. Yeah. And that one's in the film festival. And then the second one is our freshwater project, it's the Iceland one that I referenced a minute ago, where, we're over there in the fall targeting sea run brown trout. And these fish are amazing. They have an amazing life history where they've lived through, so many different volcanic lava, flood events and things like that, where, they're very, very strong, resilient fish. They were there before the Vikings. They're these really such an amazing species. And we were able to go over and target them and catch them in these rivers, and they're humongous. They're awesome. And a cool little connection to what we're going to talk about later is we actually Euro nymphed a ton for them.
Oh, you did?
Oh, yeah. Even though we're in another part of the country or another part of the world, and, people are thinking, you got to throw big streamers and things like that. even the guides over there, they Euro nymph quite a bit for them. And it's a very, very effective method, not just for trout in rivers here, like what we have in the US and I mean, all over the world, but all over the place. So yeah, the Iceland film is visually, it's the best film we've ever shot. I'll just say that outright. It's a beautiful masterpiece. It's so fun. We had my buddy Nick and my buddy Phil on that project, and they actually absolutely crushed it. And yeah, they're both in the film festival. So
there you go.
Cool stuff.
There you go. How long are typically your film? Do you have a set kind of rough timing you try to make these things for your production?
That's a great question. So there's two different types of films in the film festival. There are features, which are, 10 to 15 minutes in duration. And then there's, the shorter films, which are, 6 to 9 minutes roughly. And the South Caicos film is about 13 minutes. It's in the feature length. Mm-hmm. And the Iceland film, so my buddy Nick did the editing on it, and he kept it at a very, very good tempo, good pacing, and it's fun. It's got a ton of energy, and it's about 7 minutes is all. So it's a little bit on the shorter end, but it's so packed with energy that it doesn't disappoint. Yeah. So we've got, one of each, one a little bit shorter and one a little.
And that's, and I guess where could they go to check those out? Those are probably, as we speak, maybe not out, but are they coming out?
Yeah, the trailers are live. You can go to flyfilmfest.com to see the trailers, and you can also check out dates and schedule, locations and dates of where the film festival will be touring this year. It has over 100. I think there's going to be over 120 different locations, mostly in North America, but a few all over the world as well. So you can check out dates, locations there. And then next year, we'll actually launch them on our YouTube channel. But for now, the only place to check them out is actually at the festival.
At the festival. Cool. So we'll get links in the show notes to that link there as well. And then, as we go, we'll probably talk more about this, and maybe we'll save more of the video production for another podcast. But I did want to hear, the Euro Nymphing, we're doing some stuff right now where we went out. I did a trip with Pete Erickson last year. We're doing some other stuff, and, and it's been a lot of fun because for me, it wasn't the easiest thing to learn. I'm still kind of a beginner, but I'm curious on the videos you did with Lance and Devin. Are there certain videos that were more popular than others, or topics, out of everything you guys did that really resonated with people?
Yeah. So I think the one that has been the most popular is definitely the first one. Modern Nymphing was the name of it, and it's in the course as well. And that's because it sets a foundation. So in that film, we talk about gear, we talk about flies, we talk about reading water. Devin and Lance do such an exceptional job of breaking things down in a simplified way that builds a foundation that the other two films and the rest of the course they build upon. So that's a great starting point. We're not really talking about some of the more in-depth leader styles, some of the more in-depth versatility of the rig. We don't really talk about that in that first part. But yeah. So people sometimes are wondering about, what gear to use. And I think it's important for people to realize too, like when we started doing this, which I wasn't one of the pioneers, I was an early adapter, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I jumped in within just a few years of it coming over to the States. But Devin and Lance and those guys, like for the first few years, I was fishing a 9-foot 5-weight to Euro nymph. I was tying in whatever colored cider material I could find. At first, I didn't even have tungsten beads, so I was double wrapping lead like crazy just to get these flies heavy enough. And I was catching an absolute ton of fish compared to what I was catching before. So there's no reason to get bogged down with all the gear. It does help. It helps a ton, but there are ways to catch fish Euro nymphing with what you've got right now, and there's some cool things like that.
That's a good point. Yeah. Don't get bogged down. So just get started and learn it along the way. I'm just looking at, you covered all, like you said, gear, rigs, cider, weighted flies, casting strategies, right? It seems like the first one you covered like all the major things. And then you just kind of, as you go in the videos, it gets more advanced, I guess. Is that the way you'd look at it?
Yeah. So the other videos have a few different approaches. So as Devin and Lance continue to progress in fine-tuning their Euro nymphing techniques, they've come up with some new leader formulas. They've come up with some other, like some fun, versatile ways to fish a Euro rig. For example, streamers, jig streamers, dry droppers, single dry flies. Like you can fish all sorts of things on this really long leader and be very, very effective with it. So a lot of that stuff comes in later on, in other chapters as we move through the course. And then the third film that we made in the series was called Adaptive Fly Fishing. And we actually cover more than just Euro nymphing in that film. So reading water is a big part of that one, where they break down water types. So pocket water, riffles, runs, glides, big river riffles, big river pools versus small stream pools. And they really dive into water types and what technique works best in each of those water types, which is phenomenal. There's, they're fishing, certain parts of it. Lance is fishing just a sink tip line with, 2 woolly buggers, kind of. So not even on a Euro setup. So it's not all Euro nymphing. It's their actual approach. These guys, like, that's one thing that I don't know if the world knows this. Maybe they do, but if they don't, they should know that Devin and Lance, they're not just Euro nymphing phenomenal fishermen.
Yeah, their team, they're right. They're well, I guess Devin still is, right? Devin's still competing.
Yeah. So, for example, when they first started doing competitions, that weren't Team USA competitions, they would have to outcast the other competitors just to be able to enter into the competitive fishing aspect of that competition. So if these dudes, like, if you want to go and see somebody bomb, throw the fly line accurately at a target, that's these guys, right? If you want to see somebody throw a 20+ foot dry fly leader to perfection, that's these guys. If you want to see, a streamer leader setup that's going to just rail on fish in giant rivers, small streams, whatever it might be, it's these guys. So although we have focused a lot of our instruction on Euro nymphing, rightfully so, it's a very, very deadly technique. Devin and Lance are just phenomenal fishermen. And so we incorporate a lot of that into the latter part of the series, the adaptive fly fishing part of it. And there's just so much to learn, even if guys aren't even, fully into Euro nymphing. Like, it's just really great. They're great instructors.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I think Devin definitely mentioned that along the way in one of the episodes we did, where to be a competitive fisherman, be in the space, you can't just be a Euro nymphing solely, right? You got to be great at everything, which people don't realize, right?
No. Yeah, Euro nymphing is such a great technique, but at the end of the day, 3 or 4 years ago, Devin was teaching me this Spanish dry fly leader setup that couldn't believe. We're casting these 20 to 25 foot leaders, and he's doing it to just perfection. And I'm out there struggling, and now that's become a huge part of the dry fly fishing that I do too. So it's fun to learn along the way, and just to be confident that these guys really are fantastic at what they do, and helping other people learn is what we do.
Good. Well, and maybe we can keep this higher level. I just had a few questions. Maybe we can try to get some tips in here. So you mentioned a few of them just on this. I'm thinking like finding fish, fighting fish, casting. These are all big tips. Maybe we can just kind of think of this, let's just take it to the finding fish. You guys did a bunch of things in here about how to find fish. What would be something you would provide as a tip somebody can think about, like, okay, they're going to this river, whether it's in Utah or whatever, and they don't know where to start. Finding fish, where do you start with that?
That's a great question. So something that gets overlooked is time of year and water temperature. The reason why that's so important is because fish they're not going to be in the same places throughout the year. So it all depends on kind of where the fish are the most comfortable, what they need for that time of year. In the wintertime, right now, as we're talking, fish are going to be pooled up. They're going to be, trying to reserve a lot of their energy. They still feed, but it's not as frequently as they do other times of the year when the water temps are warmer and their metabolisms are up. So water temperature is a big one. The summertime when water temps are up, they're going to be in faster moving water. They're going to be in riffles. They're going to be in runs. They'll still be in those pools, but not every fish in the river will be in those pools, right?
All right.
Insect activity will increase as water temperatures are up. So fish spread out all over the place. I think the biggest advantage of Euro nymphing and water types, like where you're talking about fighting fish, is you can target types of water that other people just walk by.
Right. Yep.
So in the summertime, for example, or the shoulder seasons too. I mean, fish will hold in other types of water, but riffles, pocket water, like sometimes you'll look out and just think, how could a fish hold in there? But if you look, there's these little hydraulic cushions all throughout the river that will hold fish. And most fishermen, they don't have flies that'll get down.
No.
They don't have the technique, keeping the leader off the water, that sort of thing, reducing sag, all of the advantages of Euro nymphing. They can't effectively do that with an indicator rig. So a lot of times they just walk past this water. Or if they fish it, they're not fishing it effectively, and their flies just cruise right over the top in the faster current seams that are higher in the water column, and they miss out on a lot of the fish. So it's important to know, first of all, they will be in different places throughout the year, but you can target these really fun water types with Euro nymphing that you can't target with other techniques.
Yeah, that is definitely a key. So you just cover more water, and then the water you're covering, you're down in the zone, right? Because you're always getting down there. So that's a good start. So what about on fighting fish? So you found the fish, you've got it on. What would be a tip you give somebody for landing that fish? Maybe it's a giant fish and they have a light. Well, again, Euro leaders have a pretty light tip. So what would you say there?
Yeah. So if I could tell a story to kind of illustrate this. So Devin and I, with a couple other buddies, we were fishing for steelhead, and we were Euro nymphing in this little tiny pocket, like deep water, not a place that's really conducive for swimming for steelhead. And Devin was landing his fish, a couple of days thing, and I was hooking fish, but for the first 2 days out of this 3-day trip, I could not land a steelhead the same way. They're just big, they're powerful, they're strong, they're amazing. And I was struggling. I wasn't breaking them off, but I was losing them. And I was having a hard time understanding why. And this is like, I wasn't new to fly fishing or to Euro nymphing, but I was apparently not, I hadn't connected the dots yet. We'll just put it that way.
Yeah.
So as we were going through, Devin, I asked him, I'm a humble enough fisherman. I'm like, dude, tell me, what did I do wrong? And he started teaching me about angles and water currents and things like that I had never thought about. And number one, if that fish is downstream of you when it's time to net that fish, you've got not only the weight of the fish, the fight of the fish, but you've got all the pull of the river currents pulling that fish away from you.
Yep.
So I kept trying to net these fish. I'd swing them down below me in this faster water, and then I'd reach, I'd hold my rod up high and I'd reach for them and pop, fly it pop out. So that's something I learned. So on that trip, I actually ended up hooking the biggest steelhead any of us hooked that trip. And I just started yelling at Devin, tell me what to do. Tell me what to do. I don't want it. We could see this fish. Like, I don't want to lose this one. I've been losing fish all trip long. I don't want to lose this one. And so he taught me the basics of how to fight fish. And this applies for small fish and big fish. I'm like, number one is as soon as you go tight to that fish, you actually want to rotate your rod tip upstream, and you want to keep it low. So think of a river from top to bottom. So the faster currents are going to be flowing towards the surface of the river. And the higher you keep your rod tip, the more you're forcing that fish into those faster water currents, and the harder it's going to be to land that fish, because you're really setting yourself up for failure by keeping up in that really fast water. Now, if there's obstacles such as rocks, boulders, trees, that's when you've got to get your rod tip up to direct them around those areas. Otherwise, rotate your rod upstream, keep it at a horizontal angle, and if you can, keep a deep bend in that rod. So you want a big C shape in the rod, which usually means that the butt of the rod is pointed downstream, right?
Yep.
And you've got a big bend in the rod, and as you find that fish, you're trying to get him upstream of you. That's the whole goal. Whether it takes you, whether you have to run downstream if it's a big fish and reposition yourself, or if you can work it upstream of you, that's fine too. But the idea is to get that fish, keep him in the medium currents, so he's working himself, wearing himself down, get him upstream of you. And then once he's at a good angle above you, that's when you lift the rod, raise him into those upper currents, and have the river bring him into your net, versus scooping and dragging and trying to figure out how to get this fish in. Let the river do the work, And anyway, so I don't know if that was a good enough description.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but that's game changer.
Yeah, that's huge. Yeah, and you're talking steelhead. So what was do you remember what fly you were using for that steelhead? These are like little nymphs?
Yeah, it was probably, there's three nymphs that I do really well with for steelhead. A rubber leg stone.
Oh, yeah.
That has, just some hot chenille on the front, or a bead that's brightly colored, like a pink bead. That's a good one. There's an egg pattern that I tie that's called a tungsten embryo, that essentially it's a tungsten bead with resin covering it. But whatever kind of an egg pattern that will get down deep does well for steelhead. And then just a big pink scud also does well. So those are the three kind of that I turn to. And I don't remember what those fish were eating on that trip. Devin has his magneto stone, which is like a purple body. I think it has a pink bead. Rubber legs. They're kind of big, flashy, they're colorful flies. It was one of those patterns. Yep.
Right on. Cool. And so let's go to the casting part, because I think that's a challenge I have with casting, especially when you're talking about Euro, leaders and lines. What would be a tip you would offer somebody? I'm not sure if the steelhead, if you're, that trip you were having casting long lines, or what does that look like? But what would you tell somebody who's struggling with casting?
Yeah, so casting is one of the things that people have a hard time with Euro nymphing. And first of all, there are a couple different leader formulas. There's a modular leader, which has a little bit thicker of a butt section, and it's going to be easier to cast. And then there's the micro thin leaders, which they're like, very, very thin, all the way from the fly line all the way down. And those ones are going to be tougher to cast, right? So first of all, with casting, start with the modular leader if you're new to this. And if you're looking, Devin sells them on his website. Scientific Anglers, I believe, just came out with a set of different diameter butt sections for Euro leaders as well. But the thicker the butt section, the easier it's going to be cast to kind of learn and to figure it out. And it's going to fish very, very well. After the leader setup, something to consider is you're actually casting the weight of the flies as much as anything, right?
Yeah.
So you've got to keep tension. Now, an oval cast is the most basic Euro cast, and we do it all the time. It's the number one cast that we do. And what that looks like is, first of all, your fly's going to be downstream of you. Water's going to be keeping them tight. You could just do a water load, right? Mm-hmm. You could just use the tension of the water to flip them back upstream. But more effectively, what you're going to do is you're going to draw an oval with your rod tip. Your rod tip's going to swing down a little bit lower towards the water's surface, and then comes over your head, kind of like a lasso in an oval shape. And then you're going to stop your rod tip back out in front of you, out towards the river. Now, what that does is it actually keeps the tension of those flies connected to your rod tip, and it loads the rod to where you can make an accurate cast. Now, if you don't have connection with your flies, there's no weight to load that rod. You're casting a 20-foot leader, however long your leader is, and you have not loaded your rod, and then it just pedals up and you have problems. So you got to keep tension with your flies and utilize an oval cast in order to do that. And that will increase your casting ability and your accuracy, and it becomes a lot of fun.
The oval cast. Okay. And describe that again. So if you're fishing down, and say you're down below you with your line, if the river's going from left to right and you're on river right, and you're down below, then what would you do if you fish the line's below you? What's the next step?
Yeah, so let's take it one step forward. So you just finished drifting your flies, and at the end of your drift with a Euro rig, you're always going to set the hook. Okay, what that's going to do, it's going to be a horizontal, close to the water's surface hook set. You're not going to set the hook up in the air. You're going to set it downstream and horizontally. What that does, it lifts your nymphs off from the water, from the bottom of the river if they're on the bottom, or up through the water column. And it's going to make it easier to cast while they're still in the water. So you set the hook, and in that same horizontal downstream motion, you keep your rod tip low at first. You're going to take that tension with the flies connected to your rod tip, right? And you're going to swoop your rod tip over your head in an oval shape. So if you're on river right, you're now swooping to the right with a low rod tip. You're bringing that rod around, and as you come forward, you'll actually be able to feel the flies throughout the duration of your cast, the weight of the flies pulling the rod tip, right? You'll be able to feel that throughout the duration. But as they get behind you, you'll actually maybe even pause for just a brief millisecond, right? As those flies keep their tension, then you're going to bring your rod tip back forward in that oval shape. And when your rod is out towards the water, kind of towards the target where you're trying to cast to, you're going to stop your rod tip and let that rod unload and present that cast.
That's sweet. Yeah, that is an awesome tip. I mean, the idea being, like you said, always keep tension, because as soon as you lose the tension, that's when the thing's going to just pile on you. It's not going to do anything.
Yeah, that's the frustration with a lot of guys. And there are things you can do with your arm and your elbow and your wrist. You actually cast a lot more with your wrist when you're Euro casting.
Yeah.
With a floating fly line, let's say you're throwing dry flies, you don't use your wrist, or you're going to throw tailing loops and you're going to have a lot of problems. However, with a Euro rig, you're going to include your wrist quite a bit more, because you need to speed that system up to keep that tension with your flies to your rod tip. So you're going to use a little more wrist when you're doing that oval cast, and you're going to just make sure you keep that tension. If you keep the tension, you won't have any troubles. But one other tip too is, as you come forward in that oval cast, most of the time I find that I have to stop my rod tip downstream, pointed at a little bit steeper angle across the river from me, than where my target area is. So if I want to cast at a 45 out into the river, as I come forward, my rod tip is actually going to be significantly lower than that at my stopping angle, if that makes sense. And that will help with accuracy as well. So you're going to actually follow through and cast your rod tip a little bit lower than where you want your flies to land, if that makes sense.
Helena exists as a crossroads between past and present, tame and untamed, mountainous wilderness, and hometown warmth. A place where you can float the river without seeing a soul, stroll through their charming downtown, enjoy breweries and breathtaking views all in the same day. It isn't a secret for passionate anglers that Helena is most sought after for its close vicinity to world-class blue ribbon fishing on the Missouri. Then what is the secret about fly fishing in Helena? The continual slow ripple of the river, animals roaming the banks, the solitude of the river surrounded by mountains, and of course, the sound of a rod bending to an epic trout. For those looking for serenity and a low-key fishing destination, Helena's Missouri River begs to challenge new and advanced fly fishing anglers in Montana. They are unexpected, unfussy, unspoiled. They don't pretend to be anything they're not, and they are proud of who they are. But don't take it from us. Come discover Helena's fly fishing secrets for yourself. Visit Helena, Montana right now. That's HelenaMT.com. And all this we're talking about, you guys cover a lot of this in probably the first video. Like you can see, take this further, everything we're talking about here.
Oh yeah, the first video covers it in much more depth than what I'm talking about, and visually,
Yeah.
And then the second video, because casting is a big part of struggles that people have with this setup. The second video, so in the series, it's called Modern Nymphing Elevated.
Yep.
The first section of that is helping people clean up their casting mistakes. Yep. And giving them more and more tips of how to really make that.
This is really cool. Yeah, no, I think it's, again, going back to the value, this is a crazy value for everything that people get. Well, let's talk about that. You just mentioned it right there, strike detection. Maybe let's talk about that, because again, you're not Euro nymphing typically. You're just you don't have indicators, anything like that. What would be one tip there for detecting the strike?
Yeah, strike detection is one of the greatest advantages of the Euro setup. So number one, you're going to get a better drift with the Euro setup. But number two, since you're connected to those flies, right? There's no indicator, there's no split shot, there's no hinges in your system. As soon as the bottom or a fish or anything hits those flies, there's going to be a visual indication with your siders. Now, the sider is the colored section of leader material built into the leader. Now, it's either going to jump forward and just hesitate, pause, twitch, do something, and you'll see that. Or when you're first learning, I actually find that a lot of people, they don't detect the sider as well, but they feel a strike. So when you're first learning, your rod is going to bounce. You're going to feel it when it ticks the bottom. You're going to feel it when the fish hits, and you're going to know to set the hook a lot quicker than if you have an indicator on there.
Right.
But as you progress through Euro nymphing, more commonly, you're going to see the sider jump far before you feel the fish.
Oh, wow.
So it's a progression, right? So first you're going to hopefully you see it, but if you don't, it's okay, right?
Mm-hmm.
You'll fill them, and then you'll set the hook downstream every time.
Oh, always downstream.
Always downstream at a horizontal angle, because if there's no fish, you're just right into your next cast. So there's no downtime of just flipping your flies downstream and having to prepare for your next cast. No, it's a very
That's
fluid
your
thing.
set. Like, yeah, you're basically setting the hook, but then that's the start of your oval cast if you don't have a fish.
That's exactly right, Dave. Yep. So your hook set at the end of every single drift leads into that oval cast. So yeah, the oval cast, the hook set, the strike detection, all those things, they play together in the entire setup. So the strike detection is one of the funnest parts about it, because you actually, everybody loves a good bobber down on an indicator rig. Let's do this. That's a good time. I still enjoy that. I'm not a guy that doesn't fish indicators.
Yep.
There are some places, even on Stillwater,
Sure.
I'll throw a culminated rig with indicators just to see that bobber go down,
Definitely.
But that strike detection of either seeing the sider or feeling the fish connects you to that fish so much quicker than any other setup, to where your landing success goes up the Euro setup. Yeah.
This is great. No, this is all, and I'm just kind of picking some things out here. I think maybe we'll do few more here as we're going. So, again, I'm just kind of looking off the agenda off of some of the videos and stuff. But these are good topics. These like drift management. That's another one. So you're down there, you've got this thing, like we said, strike detection. You can see that. But what does drift management mean? Is that controlling like your leader, your fly? What does that consist of?
Yeah. So there's two different ways that you can manage your drift. Number one, you can have a fixed leader length, meaning you pinch your leader, with your rod hand at a certain amount of length. So if it's a small stream, for example, and you want to just cover the same length of water and it's close to you, you can just cast the same amount of leader every time.
Right, which makes it nice because you can just kind of like, I'm hit that spot, that, right. You're covering all the water with just the same length. So you don't have to mess with anything.
And with the long rod, the Euro rods nowadays are, 10 to 11 foot rods typically. You can adjust where you're putting those flies by raising your rod up and down. And, there's a little bit of leader control with how you're using the rod as well. So you can use a fixed amount of line, especially when you're starting out. That's a very easy way to manage your drift. But the bulk of the time, we're using both hands, right? So we're making a cast upstream, for example. And as the line's coming down, just like you do in all of fly fishing, you're pulling in your slack. Now, an important thing to note is that you don't want to pull your slack with your rod hand. You don't want to move that rod hand too much because everything you do with that rod hand with a Euro setup, once again, you're connected to those flies directly. So if you're moving that rod hand, you're moving those flies. And we want a dead drift the majority of the time. So instead, you're going to reach up. I'm a right-handed fisherman, so I'm going to reach up with my left hand and I'm going to pull in my slack. And my only arm that's moving, my rod arm is moving with the current of the river. My left hand is pulling in the slack, right? So what you're looking for in your drift is typically your rod tip is going to be downstream of your leader slightly, and there's going to be a little bow in your sighter. So you're not tight. You're not super tight. If you're really tight to those flies, you're pulling them through. And there's a misconception that I think has been debunked by now, but years ago, lots of people just said that Euro nymphing was dredging the bottom of the river, dragging your across.
Yeah.
And that's it just make guys that actually do it, we just chuckle about it like, wow, that's said from somebody who has never
done it, right?
And if they have, they didn't do it right, So anyways, the goal is to have your rod tip. So visually imagine your rod tip pointed out on the river and let's go on river right again. So you're on river right, your rod tip's out there, and to the left of the rod tip, going back upstream, your leader and sighter have a little bow in them. Now, the reason for that bow is to tell you that you are not dragging your flies, for one, and that your flies are getting a good drift. And then number two, when that bow goes tight, set the hook, right? So that's your strike indication as well. But with that left hand, you're just nice and easy pulling in your slack as it's coming downriver, and you're ready for that hook set at any time because you still have your leader underneath your rod hand where you're pulling the line from. So if you need to set the hook, you just pinch down, horizontal, downstream, set that hook right into either a fish or into your next cast.
That's why
and
it's
just
so cool.
making sure and then just I was going to say your shoulder and your arm can get a little fatigued. Euro nymphing if you're holding it out there for a while. You just want to make sure that you're not moving those flies.
Yeah.
Stable as possible. And a lot of times we have an extended arm, but if your arm is tired or you're new to it, or, you have shoulder problems, whatever it might be, just take your arm, tuck that elbow into your side right there and stabilize it a little bit more. You won't have as much reach. Your leader angle might be a little bit off, but it's still going to drift and still going to get you a good presentation, and it's not going to wear your arm out as much. So there's another little tip about that.
No, that's perfect. I think that is, and I've heard that one before where people have complained about that, right? Your arm's hanging out there, it's getting tired, but that's a good tip that you don't have to always have it way up in the air the whole day, right? You can adjust it a little bit.
Yeah.
Perfect. No, that was good. I love that.
It should be enjoyable still, right?
Yeah, exactly.
If you're out there wearing yourself out and just, man, I can't make a cast and I can't hold my arm up. This isn't for me. Well, there are ways around all of those obstacles. Yeah.
That was kind of the thing. Steelhead fishing for me back in the day, we used to use single-handed rods, like 9-foot 8 weights. And I remember you get tired at the end of the day, you'd be kind of beat, and then once the spay came in, now it's like, God, you could be out there all day and it's nothing. You're just kind of swinging and just enjoy, right? I mean, have you done a little spay casting?
Oh yeah, for sure. I wouldn't say that I'm not that great at it, but I love it. Absolutely love it. It's so fun.
Yeah,
yep.
It is cool. Nice. Well, these are awesome. I mean, we're definitely nailing this. Let's get a couple more and then we'll start to take it out of here. So, another one, wind. So just, wind is always like at some rivers, it's like half the time it's windy. Sometimes you can't even cast. Especially now with Euro with these light leaders, what are your tips there with overcoming, the wind, like you guys say here?
Yeah. So let's paint a picture really quick for listeners. If you're fishing a leader that doesn't have a dry fly or an indicator or something to tether it to the water's surface, the wind is going to blow that leader all over the place, right?
Yep.
So a couple ways to overcome that problem is, number one, you can fish after you advance into Euro nymphing, you can fish a thinner leader, and that's going to give less surface area for wind to grab, and you're going to get a better drift. There's one tip. But for a lot of times, there's other ways to combat it as well. So if you want to keep on nymphing, let's say you're fishing a 2-nymph setup. What I do a lot of times is I'll take one of those nymphs and I'll upsize it. So if I'm fishing a size, like a 3mm tungsten bead or whatnot, if it's really windy, I'm going to have to go to a bigger bead, a heavier fly that's going to stay down in the water column a little bit longer and kind of combat the wind pulling against my leader. So you can go with heavier flies. That's going to help a little bit. But what I have done lately, and I've just become two things that have become kind of my go-to if it's really windy out. Number one, I'll fish a streamer on my Euro setup. Now the streamer is okay to have a little bit of movement most of the time, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's representing a bait fish pattern. So as the wind's moving my leader, I'm still, I can do a lot of things with a streamer on a Euro setup. I can jig that streamer. I can swing that streamer. I can stall that streamer in a pocket, which is really hard to do with a floating line, right? Or a sink tip line.
Right.
I'll have so much more control. And the wind, that streamer is heavy enough that the wind doesn't affect it in the same way. So it's still going to stay out in the current. It's still going to be effective. So a lot of times I'll switch to a jig streamer, or I even fish you can fish any streamer you want on a Euro setup. Doesn't have to be a jig streamer. You can fish whatever streamer you want. But that's one tip, is to fish a streamer on the Euro rig. But what I've really just fallen in love with the last couple of years on smaller streams is I just go to a dry dropper on my Euro leader. And it is absolutely the most effective dry dropper system that you can fish. You've got a really long leader. So first of all, you're not having drag. You're not having problems with, that dry fly getting pulled across the currents. Number two, you've got the weight of your nymph still. And I'll fish chubbies and bigger dry flies a lot of times with the setup. And the casting is super easy. You keep that oval cast, just do the exact same casting stroke. When the flies hit the water, keep your rod tip up so your leader doesn't hit the water and get pulled around. But why this is good against the wind is that dry fly anchors your system on the water surface. So now as your leader's getting pulled by the wind, that dry fly is actually keeping your setup in the drift.
Gotcha. So it's equalizing the wind effect a little bit.
Yep. Yeah,
wow.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's cool. And what would be your typical dropper setup? If you were using that with a chubby or something, then you'd have just a Euro nymph below that off the bend, or how would you do that?
Yeah, so I fish all my tandem setups on tags. So we have a dropper. Yep, a dropper tag is going to be 4 to 6 inches in length. That's going to have that dry fly, like a chubby, or an ant, like a bionic ant. One of Lance's patterns is fantastic. For this setup, something like that that's very buoyant on a tag, and then down below it, we call it the point fly, is going to be a nymph that is weighted, and a chubby can suspend big heavy stone flies. It can suspend all kinds of flies, because it's big and buoyant. But I fish this a lot, like with midges too. So there's a Olsen CDC midge. It's on a size 18. It's fairly buoyant for a little midge pattern, but you can drop a size 20, just as whatever you want to fish off the back end of that as well with this same setup. A little bit harder to cast because you don't have the weight of the flies to pull it around and to get the cast out there, but you can fish all kinds of setups with it. But my go-to in windy conditions is usually a bigger, buoyant dry fly and a heavier fly so I can cast, right?
Yeah, that's so cool. Yeah, I mean, that's a great tip because it almost is counterintuitive, because you think, wow, a bigger giant dry fly on there, it's going to be, maybe affect the wind, but no, it actually holds it and keeps it moving, which is what you want.
Yeah.
When you're Euro nymphing, are you ever holding that thing? Is it ever sitting there in one spot, or is it pretty much always moving on the move?
Oh, it depends on if you're throwing into pockets, or if you've got a good, beautiful pocket that you want to kind of stall those flies in for a moment, you can. Yep, and big pools. What we'll also do, some induced takes is what we call them. So in big pools or really slow water, we'll cast that Euro setup and we're tight to it, and we'll give those little nymphs just a slight jigging motion, just every not repetitive, just once every 3 or 4 seconds, you just raise your rod tip 3 or 4 inches. and it's going to elevate and make those flies elevate and descend over and over again and add a little bit of motion. And in pools, a lot of times that will actually induce fish to, it'll get them excited enough to hit those flies. Yep.
Wow. That's cool. Yeah. This is great. No, I think we've really nailed it on some of these. And again, we're just kind of touching the surface. We will definitely have, put some links out to this stuff. I wanted to, just quickly as we start to take it out of here, back to the videos, because I think this is really interesting how you've got a lot going here. As you look back, these have been really popular. What about some of your other stuff, say on YouTube or other movies you've done? What would you say are some of the most popular that people could take a look at that are out there?
Yeah. So thanks for asking. We have a series that we're in. We're actually creating season 4 of it right now. So there's 3 seasons already on YouTube of what we call the buffet series. And the buffet series is, they're high energy, fun fly fishing films. They're short. They're 3 to 5 minutes in length. I think there's how many do we have on YouTube right now? There's 15 or so already on there. And they're everything from saltwater to freshwater, Euro Nymphing to dry flies to streamer fishing to bull trout to rooster fish, flats fishing, all kinds of fun adventures. And it's short form content so people can consume them during their lunch break or whenever they want.
Sure.
But that's all on YouTube. And yeah, those are pretty exciting. We're in season 4 right now where we've got, right now we're editing out a hopper film that's just got some just amazing visuals, an Alaska film for it, and some other really fun ones. So yeah, outside of just the film festival stuff and the instructional content, we do have some other fun films, and they can all be found on our YouTube channel.
Okay, on YouTube. And that's it. Yep. Is that Capture Adventure Media, or what was YouTube?
Actually, it's just my name. So yeah. Gilbert Rowley.
Oh, Gilbert
is the name of the channel.
Yeah.
Yep.
Gotcha. Cool. So that's where they can track that down. And how do you, as far as where you're going next, is this something that's dependent more on your personal preference, or are you just kind of figuring out where your next, opportunity is and you go there? How do you decide? You must have kind of a bucket list of places you maybe still want to get to.
Yeah. So we're lucky enough to where at least once or twice a year, we can kind of pinpoint a place that is on that bucket list, right? So
yeah,
for example, I have yet to go to Patagonia. I haven't fished down there before. And right now we've been talking for, 8 months with a guy down there, and we're hoping to be down there in March.
Oh,
now,
good. Wow.
A lot of these trips have a lot of moving variables that, they don't always go through, but hopefully, so that's a big one on the list. We have some other fun destinations. We'll do another saltwater trip this year as well. And hopefully, I'd love to get back to Iceland. I don't know that I've been to a place that has been just as amazing. I mean, the fish were absolutely astonishing, but the scenery stole the show.
Yeah, what is it about the Iceland scenery? Because you hear about it what sticks out most when you think about it now?
Yeah, so on our trip, we didn't go to the highlands. We were actually on pretty close to the coast, right, where these fish are running up. They're like a steelhead, right? These brown trout, they grow up, they live in the ocean, they grow big, and then they come back to the river system. So as we were driving over, it was unbelievable. We're driving about a 4-hour ride in the shuttle car to get to where we were going to be after the week. We saw hundreds of waterfalls. Absolutely. It was everywhere you look. And it was gushing rain, so the waterfalls were swollen as well. So they were even more pronounced than maybe they would on a normal day. But it was unbelievable. There's a part at the end of the film that's in the IF4 this year. My buddy Phil, he says, do you remember that one time when you couldn't not film a waterfall? I don't know how he says it, but everywhere you put the camera, there's a waterfall.
Yeah.
It's like
waterfalls everywhere. Every shot is a waterfall.
Absolutely. We caught these huge, huge brown trout, and behind the fishermen is a huge waterfall. It's the most amazing, incredible scenery ever. The wildlife over there isn't besides the fish. It's not like you're not seeing bears, you're not seeing caribou, you're not seeing wolves. It's not that. It's just the land is so different than anywhere I've been. I've been a lot of places, and it's the most unearthly place on earth, to quote my buddy Phil. It's just this is just unbelievable. But yeah, the scenery stole the show. It just spoke to me, and I just can't wait to get back. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. That's so awesome. That's definitely a big bucket list trip for me too. So good. Well, I think we covered today a couple of random ones, and we'll kind of get out of here. You mentioned at the start the guitar. Did you ever pick that up after you put it down back in the day?
A little bit, but now I've got 5 kids.
Oh wow,
they're little kids. So every time I pull the guitar off the wall, I've got a kid wanting to play it like a drum.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I hear you.
So I wish that I had stayed with it. I do, I pull it down monthly. I pull it down and play a couple songs. I mean, right now the big hit in the house is Baby Shark,
Oh,
so.
Baby Shark, of course, I know that one well. Yeah,
Oh yeah, yeah. So I definitely let it slip though, to be honest with you. But
yeah, it's
it was a
tough.
big part of my life, and it's fun that it still exists, but not at the level that it wants to.
Yeah, yeah, it's tough. You can't do it all. I think about my thing when I had my kids. I remember I was just getting into duck hunting, and I haven't thought about duck hunting in probably 11 years. You know what I mean? Like, but it's the great thing. I think you find those things where you have time that you love most, and you double down. That feels like that's kind of what you've done. It feels like this fly fishing thing are all in on still. And then the video production, you're also all in. Are those the two things that you've just kind of put all your energy and passion and your family? Is that kind of how it looks for you?
Yeah, those are the most important things. And then right up there with it. So fly fishing, some days, I hate to admit it, but some days it does feel like work, which is a blessing and a curse, right? It's great. But I'm actually a big game hunter as well.
Oh, wow.
So that's the one thing that I don't let film interrupt with. Now, we have done some hunting films and a few things like that, but when the fall rolls around, the fishing is fantastic and it's hard to peel away from, but I actually reserve a lot of September and a lot of October. That's like my vacation, right? Because fishing does, unfortunately, sometimes feel like work, but yeah, so I still hunt quite a bit.
That's cool. Is this like rifle, bow? What type of big game?
Yeah, all of the above. Yep. So I do archery hunt. I wouldn't say that I'm a great archery hunter. We chase them every year with bows, but most years it's a muzzleloader or a rifle hunt. And a big part of why we do it is we like to focus a little bit on being healthy.
Sure.
Which is hard on the road, but when we're home, I like to put the best meat that I can in the freezer. And there's no higher quality protein source than, an elk or a deer that's been, wild grazing its entire life.
That's right. Yeah, no, I hear you, man. I think I've elk hunted, mainly elk and deer, and there's been times where it's been a struggle, but we this year got 2 deer and had the family. It was this really epic trip. I had my kids out, my kids are 9 and 11, and they actually did the trip for the first time.
Nice.
And it's like a river trip and a hunting trip. So we literally left them at camp a full day while me and Megan were hunting. And it was her first. Yeah. And she got her first buck, and then I got a really nice big buck. And yeah, it was just this epic trip. It's those ones that you just look back, you're like, wow, did that really happen? And then the cool thing is that my kids were there to be part of it. And you just know, like, they will never forget that.
That's the best. Oh my heck. I love that story. And I'm glad you guys had that experience. That's what all this is about, is getting, family, friends, whatever it might be, into an experience that is going to stick with them and resonate with them for the rest of their lives. And that's one that your kids will never forget.
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I've been struggling a little bit because the fly fishing, even though we were on river trips and stuff a lot, I haven't ever pushed it on them. You know what I mean? So I never will. And it's just like, well, if they pick it up, that, they haven't really, they could cast and stuff, but they haven't really got into it. How do you feel about that with your kids? Do you, are you thinking like, wow, it'd be cool if they did this, or what's your look there? I mean, it sounds like they're a little bit younger.
Yeah. So my oldest is 15.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. You're smaller.
Yeah. So I've got a range there, 15 down to 3. And my 15-year-old, he absolutely loves it. And it was same thing though. Like, we would do shorter trips. We would do trips with lots of candy in the pockets. Like, oh, here, I have a candy bar.
Right.
Let's find a way to make this fun. And we've had plenty of days that we struggled too. And he knows that that's part of it as well. But yeah, just helping him have a good experience has made it to where he loves sports. He loves hunting, but fly fishing is absolutely just his favorite thing. He loves it so much. It's been really fun for me as a dad to see him get into that. He's in some of the buffet films, he's
cool.
in some of those, catching some fish that are pretty spectacular. And yeah, any chance I can get out with him, it's a no brainer. But then I have 3 daughters after him. That's where it gets a little bit tricky, because they have a lot of hobbies, right? They like to dance, they like sports. They go hunting with me every once in a while, they go outside, but most of it's been pretty simplified with them. However, just this summer, we were fishing some high mountain lakes, and usually they're the kids that are running out with their cousins or throwing rocks or doing
right.
doing anything but fishing. But both of my next 2 daughters, who are 12 and 9, they actually both learned to cast on their own that day. They both caught a fish or 2 each.
Perfect.
On their own that day. Little stock rainbows,
Yep.
Nothing crazy. But they came home and were just bragging up to mom about how amazing it was. And, as a dad, my heart was smiling. I was like, oh my goodness, maybe they'll get into it too,
There you go. Yeah. I think that's the cool thing, is you're just planting the seed, and then eventually, even if they don't do it now, there's a good chance later they probably, they might get into it. So, and I always feel
Yeah.
like whether it's fly fishing or anything, it's really just the outdoors, right? That's the key.
Yeah, connect to the outdoors. But you brought up a good point, though. Like, I've made it a point, especially with my daughters, to make sure to never force it on them, right? Like, let's make it where they're choosing to engage in that activity so that they'll continue to want to be outside of that.
Exactly. Yeah, that's it. Cool. All right, Gilbert. Well, I think we'll leave it there. We will send everybody out to, at Gilbert Rowley, probably is the best place, YouTube, Instagram, and then we can track you down and look at some of these videos. This has been awesome today. I appreciate all your time and the tips on Euro and really just everything you've done. I think you've been doing this amazing job, and I think everybody here is going to be excited to keep in touch with you.
Thanks, Dave. I really appreciate that. This has been a ton of fun. Thanks so much for having me on.
That is a wrap. You can grab all of the show notes at wetflyswing.com. And please follow us on Instagram and share this episode out with someone you love. Please send me an email, dave@wetflyswing.com, if you have any feedback or want us to put together an episode on this podcast for you. Check in anytime. I hope you enjoyed this podcast and would love to meet up with you on the water. We have new fly fishing schools going all year long and all around the country. So if you want to connect, let's do it right now. All right, time to get out of here. I hope you have a great evening. I hope you have a great morning or great afternoon wherever in the world you are. And I appreciate you for stopping by and checking out the show today. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening to the Wet Fly Swing Fly Fishing Show. For notes and links from this episode, visit wetflyswing.com.